My name's Jeff Rutherford. This is my good friend Jeb Berrier, and I'm a director, and he's a great actor. And we're here at the Locarno Film Festival with a movie we made called A Perfect Day for Caribou, and very excited. It's been great so far. Happy to be here.
The film is about Herman, who I play, is the father of Nate, who Charlie plays. And they haven't seen each other in over a decade. And so it's basically a day that Herman and Nate spend together, kind of trying to reconnect in their sort of clunky, stunted way. You know, that two men who kind of have trouble communicating or connecting would have. And the film basically takes place over that day, conversations that they have and things that arise. I don't want to give away too much, but that's the film in a nutshell. Well, as a male who has trouble communicating, I just basically looked inside. And I mean, honestly, it was a role that that felt, in an odd way, very close to myself. I would say, you know, the wardrobe certainly always helps. The shoes. Herman has a pretty outstanding pair of shoes that honestly, like the shoes and the pants, yeah, the wardrobe all helped. One thing that for me was very helpful and inspiring was that Jeff is a big fan and devotee of Raymond Carver, the writer, and there's a lot of Raymond Carver in the story. And so I had these anthologies of Raymond Carver in my trailer, which I would read every morning and every night. Some stuff the poetry I would read aloud to myself kind of in the morning to get going. And then there was music, there was a music playlist, and all those things kind of helped me stay connected and stay in the world. And then Charlie, the relationship that I had with Charlie was kind of amazing. You know, that helped me a lot. We sort of kept each other rooted.
It was sort of a half idea that, and Jeb told me when I talked yesterday at the Q&A was the first time he had actually heard me allude to this fact, but I read Samuel Beckett's play Waiting for Godot when I was like 14, and certainly most of it went over my head, but it has remained a fascination for me all this time. And so it was sort of actually when the pandemic hit, and I thought, I bet I should try to write something that I can do with this friend of mine and then that friend of mine, doing something that kind of riffed on Godot in a very, very, very small way. I won't claim to be aligned with one of the great writers of all time. Yeah, I sat down really just with only that in mind. I knew it was a father and son, and I wrote, there's a monologue that opens the film, and I wrote that, I think, in one day, just because it kind of just
sort of came out.
Just happened. And then, honestly, then that bit of writing that opens the film then kind of just served as the reference point for the rest of it. And so, yeah, I was fortunate that the script did come together pretty quickly. And then once I had it, it was basically just sending it to Jeb and Charlie and my partner Kyra reading it and my producing partner Joe reading it, and just kind of then saying like, okay, I think we can get some steam behind this and we'll just go shoot it in these places that we know. And that's also a huge benefit, is this is my first film, but even with short films that I made, it makes it my job very easy, where I can go, I know what Jeb sounds like because not only have I worked with him, he's my friend, and then I can go, I know what Charlie sounds like because not only have I worked with him, but he's my friend, and then Dana, who's in the film, and Rick, who's in the film, and all these other people, you know, it's pretty easy make-believe for me, because I can sit and write the script and go, that might sound a little strange for Jeb to say, so I'll do it this way, you know, and then those guys get involved and they kind of do that same work with me. So I think that's a huge advantage, and hopefully something I'll get to continue to do is write parts for people that I know and I'm friends with, because that is kind of a little bit of a cheat code.
So can I ask him a question?
Sorry, that was a really long.
That's okay,
I know that was
but
really
I want to
long.
distill the thing that you brought up, which I'm also curious about, is the style of that sort of slow, deadpan humor, where we're having these exchanges that are kind of random, kind of absurd, and you find interesting that kind of almost like a Stranger Than Paradise type of humor that comes from that.
Yeah.
Like, is that something that you deliberately are aiming for when you're writing those scenes, or is it something that you're like, well, if they just say it kind of matter of fact, maybe some of this will ring as funny?
Yeah. And that's actually kind of what you asked me, so I'm sorry for not getting to it. I think that, I think it's probably closer to the second part of like, if we just do it matter of factly, maybe for some people a line will hit as funny. I think that, we're so, for better or worse, we're so saturated with, we have so much, there's such a saturation of content now. And, like, I love, Jeb and I text each other about hilarious people to just watch on Instagram and like people just talking into the camera, and like that stuff is amazing. But going back through films over the years too, no one wants, I don't think, I'm at least not interested in someone performing something and telling you, this is funny, look how funny this is, I'm about to be funny, And so I think that again, going back to his voice and Charlie's voice, and knowing that they're both funny people, but that the roles are not meant to be funny, that if I just try to write in a way that feels honest, like these two guys would communicate this way, that I think it could ring as funny. And I think that this is a hard question. I think that, these guys are not great at communicating, but I do think if you really lean in and watch the film and listen to how they are talking, they do have these odd moments that pop up that are they're true vulnerability, actually, even if it's a silly line. I'm thinking of one line about when Charlie's character talks about his car, that he really loves his car, and you can tell he loves his car, and he wants you to know that it's a cool car, and he talks about it. And to me, almost, I think the humor in the film actually comes from how just human and like sensitive the characters are, just like people, right? Is that sometimes I'm really rambling, but it's like,
though, you're getting to kind of the
but it's
essence
almost like you. Maybe this is also just like a thing about me, is that, like I think there's moments in life where it's your friend, or you watch something or you read something and you almost are not sure, should I laugh or cry? And I think that Jeb's character Herman, the way that he attempts to be fatherly to Nate, it is really, really earnest, but admittedly and objectively, he's not probably doing an amazing job.
It's an understatement.
And to me, that's what's funny. Yeah. That's what's funny. It's just that it's just, there's just human sensitivity to it, and there's no punchlines.
I think it is hard.
Yeah.
Because you're writing stuff that is really, I think at first, it's like, what would these guys say?
Yeah.
Not like I'm writing jokes. It's not like a boom, boom, 1, 2, boom, There's not a formula to it.
Yeah.
But it's the absurd.
Yeah.
That sort of ties into the Beckett thing,
Yeah, and I think
like just absurd stuff that people might say to each other in a situation like that.
Yeah.
And when it rings true, like, oh my God, somebody might say that, and that's
Yeah.
such a weird thing to say to your son.
Yeah.
That's what makes us laugh.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And it's really cool to hear you, when you first met us and said, I think your first thing was, I thought it was really funny. That's really exciting to hear because people also came up to us yesterday and told us it was heartbreaking. It's like I think that, and that actually makes me think that a lot of my friends and including Melanie who edited the film, we've seen films together where we walk out and I'm like, man, that was depressing. And she's like, I thought it was hilarious. And so like that, I think that's a more exciting feeling probably coming out of a movie is to have those different opinions. And so I think it kind of comes from maybe just that's like what I like, is that it could, it's a little thin line if it's funny or not funny or sad or anything like that. So
I really think the biggest probably thing I needed to keep in mind was, sort of keeping it, not pushing too much, and really letting that pace that we talked about, like letting it breathe, letting it have space, and then at a certain point, kind of midway, there was a point where Jeff said, because we were all spending a lot of time together, we're all getting to know each other, we're all getting a little more comfortable with each other. He said, okay, just keep in mind that you're getting a little bit, I don't want you to get too comfortable. I mean, it was true. It was a great observation that just like, don't forget the relationship that you guys have on camera. As we became better friends off camera, there was just sort of, I don't know if it was a challenge, but it was just something to keep in mind. Like, don't forget what permanentates that there is that a bit of a strangeness between the two of them that has to exist.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Black and White, it came around for a couple different reasons, but it was really, really early on. And I think the first instinct was that I think when a movie is in black and white, it just sort of automatically feels a little dreamier, automatically feels like what I'm watching isn't really my world. But it does feel like it. Like I think it kind of has that sensation of like, oh, this is similar to what I live in, but it's not quite what I live in. And that's sort of what I wanted the film to be, is that I knew there was a level of absurdity to the movie, and so I felt like that was a really natural place to take it. And then I think beyond that, as Alfonso and I started looking at references and started kind of really preparing the film, just knowing what it would do in this specific landscape, and the way that the trees would play with the dried up grass and so on and so forth, that it kind of just felt like an obvious choice. And then that would have obviously been the biggest sort of like visual decision. And then, kind of all the decisions related to the camera and the way we shot it and the way that these guys are photographed, the black and white was always sort of the core of it. And so then everything kind of falls out from that decision. So, I think, I've been lucky to, to have studied writing in school, and then had friends who I, grew up doing theater with, and so I could get them to act in my, silly short films. And then I got to meet Jeb 7 years ago, and then I started to get Jeb to be in my silly short films, and a lot of it just does come from practice. And so, and just trying things on, and then feeling like, oh, that shooting stuff for, days and days and days, and making people take, asking people to switch shifts at your job and ask them to, like all this kind of stuff that you do, that's the place where I would have started to kind of find out what I liked too. And so, yeah, I had movies in my mind, as I was also writing it too, like just bits of inspiration. And people asked me about that yesterday too, is, seeing Paris, Texas, is a movie that it's a really long film, and no one is going to be that movie could go on for another 2 hours because Harry Dean Stanton is just incredible and amazing to watch. And so I've always just, those are the types of films I like. I love, Jim Jarmusch movies as well, kind of for a similar reason. And you can just watch and listen to Tom Waits, for all day, And so the idea was sort of, just to write a film that was going to have the pace of the films that I like, and trust that these two guys would just sort of be such a great odd couple. And that's actually really what I kind of think of the two of you as, you and Charlie together, is just sort of a wonderful odd pairing that sort of makes sense, where the audience maybe on seeing you two almost is like, they don't seem like father and son. And that's kind of the point, because the whole film is about, are they going to be able to connect? Is the weight of all this stuff from the past, present, and future, is it going to get in the way? And so, yeah, through writing it, the script also, I'm kind of doing like a very long, weird, circular answer, but the script was only like 52 pages. So a pretty short script. And I think that it was all involved. It was like, Joe would say, like, part of when you're making movies, you have to figure out all the scheduling. And Joe would say, like, it's interesting, you only want to do like an eighth of a page that day. And I was like, yeah, but that scene's going to be like 6 minutes, And so everything you learn in film school and things you hear about movie making are kind of not connected to that logic, but it was just a belief in these two. Alfonso Herrera Salcedo, who's my cinematographer, also amazing. You could hand him any camera and he'll make me and Jeb and Charlie look good. So it really does just come down to trust. And then Melanie Acoca, who's my editor, I probably should have just said Melanie's name from the beginning. That's why the pace is good. She helps elevate the good bits, and if we didn't nail it, we'll cut those bits out.